Okay, in a prior video we discussed what is a distributive negotiation. In this video I'd like to talk to you about what are the procedures or best practices to follow in a distributive negotiation. Now remember, a distributive negotiation is a fixed pie. It is a mutually exclusive interest at stake that is finite in nature. If one party acquires more, the other party loses some of that interest. Okay, unlike a compatible or integrative interest, where either the parties are going the same direction in a with a compatible interest or with an integrative interest, both parties are able to trade off to a certain extent to increase the value for both the overall value in the negotiation and at the same time increase value for both parties. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump into the best practice for the distributive negotiation. Now remember, for a distributive negotiation or negotiation over a distributive interest to be successful, you need one of two things. Either you need multiple interests so you can turn it more into a trade-off, a bundling, and more of an integrative negotiation for the overall value at stake, or for a single interest, a single distributive interest at stake, you need to have a positive zone of potential agreement. That means the reservation point, or what we call the walkaway point for each party, allows for some intersection. That is, there's more than one party. There's adequate value that each party is willing to accept, and that amount crosses, right? So that being said, as long as you have that, one party is willing to pay as much as the other party is willing to accept is an easy way to see it. If one party is not willing to pay the minimum that the other party is going to accept, you don't have a positive zone of potential agreement. Okay, for more on the zone of potential agreement, look at our video on that topic. But with that being said, so you've identified the interest at stake. That's the first step in the process. And you say, okay, this is a distributive interest at stake. It's a single interest. I can't turn this into an integrative negotiation. Proceed through the process of first identify your best alternative. Okay, if you can't work out a resolution to this negotiation, what is your best alternative there? All right. And that will help you determine what your walkaway point is, your reservation point, meaning that the point at which you walk away. Now, it's not always the exact same thing as your best alternative. Sometimes there are factors at play, whether it's timing, convenience, or just innumerable other factors at play that may cause you to have some walkaway point that's different than your best alternative. Okay? But that being said, once you've determined your reservation point, you can try to assess the alternatives and reservation point of the other party. Now, if you know that, you're going to be able to grab more value in the negotiation. But that is a very difficult thing to do. Generally, I like to tell people that negotiation is a communication exercise. It is a back and forth of information where you're selectively revealing information to the other party in order to gain additional information. The party who is more skillful at that and can gain the greater amount of information, okay, either through secondary research or through that communication process, is going to grab more value in the negotiation than the other party. Both parties will still win. They'll still grab more value than their reservation point when there's a positive zone of potential agreement, but the party with the greater information generally is going to grab more value in the negotiation than the other party. And so that's what you're going for there. When you're researching the other party or trying to fill out the other party's position through communication, sometimes it's through the use of tactics that we'll talk about in a minute, such as concessions or give and takes in the negotiation, you start to figure out the other party's position. So that's what you're doing. All right. Now, at some point, you have to open up the negotiation. Either the other party does or you do. You're generally going to open up somewhere at or slightly above whatever your target point is, whatever you believe is reasonable and possible, right, in the negotiation. So that's going to be where you open up your target point. Now, do you open up, right? If you have greater information or believe you have adequate information in the negotiation, the person that opens up is generally in a better position. But you can make a serious mistake if you don't have good or adequate information and you open up and you're way off base. You're extreme on one end and can scare the other party away. You're too low on the other end and don't grab enough value. That type of thing. So anyway, be careful with your anchoring there. Now, identify your strategic position. What are you going to do? Strategy is made up of orientation, that is your general general approach to the negotiation? Are you going to be combative or competitive? Are you going to be collaborative? Are you going to be avoiding in nature? That type of thing. We look at our strategy video to learn more about what goes into strategy. But you're going to set objectives. What are you going to try to achieve? Not the overall goal of grabbing more value in the negotiation. What are you going to try to achieve with your tactics? How are you going to influence the other party? How are you going to communicate? Right? How are you going to do these things? Set objectives there. Or are you going to try to make the other party show sympathy or empathy for your position? Are you going to try to use logic and convince the other side? The objective would be convincing the other side. Next, the tactic would be to attempt to convince the other person through logic. So your tactic is to use logic. Your objective is to convince them. Your tactic is to use a sad story. Your objective is to make them feel sympathetic. Okay, so that's what makes up strategy in the negotiation. So you assess your position and what you think you're going to use. Oftentimes, in the simplest negotiations, it's just a back and forth, and your tactic is to make concessions, and that is to get the other side to make concessions, and hopefully you can arrive at a settlement point there. Okay, so you'll carry out your strategy in that way, whatever it is. Generally, like I say, in a single issue distributive negotiation, it is primarily concession based, right? The give and take back and forth. And then ultimately you arrive at or settle on final terms. Now, just keep in mind, as long as you get to a point that's above your reservation point, you win. It's just you may not have grabbed as much value as the other party in the negotiation, but that should never be a reason to walk away from the negotiation.